Call this meeting to order. Welcome back, colleagues, to meeting number 21 of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. Today, we'll be continuing the discussion which initially commenced on Monday, May 16th, 2022. As always, interpretation is available through the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, and for members participating in person, keep in mind the Board of Internal Economy's guidelines for mask use and health protocols. Before speaking, please wait until you are recognized. And when you're not speaking, please ensure that your mics are turned off. Again, a reminder that all comments by members should be addressed through the chair. Now, as you will all recall, we are resuming debate on Mr. Bergeron's sub-amendment. At the outset, I think it's to be recalled during our last debate, Mr. Perkins ceded the floor by bringing a motion to adjourn the debate. Yes, Mr. Perkins. You did bring a motion to adjourn debate. That motion was defeated. So as it's clearly stipulated in the rules of procedure, you ceded the floor. Yes, Mr. Perkins.
No, I just think put me on the list then.
Oh, okay, absolutely. Now, you'd like to be back on the list, Mr. Perkins. Just as a reminder to all colleagues, the current speaking list consists of Mr. Oliphant, Madam Gray, Mr. Morantz, who is not here today, Mr. Abul Taif, Madam Fry, and Mr. Perkins. Mr. Oliphant, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will keep my remarks very short, and I would hope that all members do, because we have important work to do on this committee. Just reminding the committee that we are very close to finishing an interim statement on Ukraine, which I would like to get finished, and we are also in a very important study on Canada's response with respect to vaccine equity and advice for the government on both what happened most recently and for future pandemics as well. I think those are two very important pieces of work, and we had one meeting on Taiwan, which I think we will have to deal with. So I will keep my remarks short, simply to say that I am supportive of Mr. Bergeron's sub-amendment from the Bloc Québécois, which I think adds some clarity to the amendment. That doesn't mean we would support the amendment. However, we will support the sub-amendment, and it is, I think, clarifying to ensure that we are recognizing that the study that has been proposed by Dr. Fry, following up her request in December to do a similar study on women's reproductive rights globally, is a study that we think is important. However, we are not attempting to jump the queue of our current work. It will go into the regular process of planning work. We would like to finish our work quickly and get it done before the end of this session and do that. So again, I would just remind the members that we are not suggesting that this study takes primacy. It is simply putting it into our work plan to ensure that we will cover a very important issue, which actually I think has been exacerbated by the war in Ukraine. We have heard testimony both at this committee and in another committee with respect to the violation of women and the egregious real crimes against humanity, war crimes committed against women in Ukraine and the current illegal invasion by Russia into Ukraine. And God forbid, some of those women may end up pregnant, and they may end up outside of Ukraine in a country that does not provide for legal abortions. They may end up having abortions that are dangerous. And we would say that this is timely and is important given the war in Ukraine. However, I will close by simply saying we would like to finish our statement on Ukraine, like to come to a conclusion on vaccine equity, like to either deal with the Taiwan study or perhaps send it to the new subcommittee that the Conservatives have suggested it is now the House has agreed to having a special committee on Canada-China relations and continue to do with that. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and I hope all will follow brief comments and we can get to that work.
Thank you, Mr. Oliphant. Ms. Gray, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this is my first opportunity to say congratulations on becoming chair of this committee. So I'm here today to speak to, I'll just read it out here, that the words "and that this study not take place until the committee makes a decision on the studies before it on Ukraine, vaccine equity, and Taiwan, as well as studies on legislation sent from the House of Commons, and further, that it not take place until the Subcommittee on Agenda and Procedure submits a report specifying the manner in which the studies be undertaken, be it settled between the words rights globally and the words "and that the committee report its finding to the House." And I wanted to speak on the importance of really continuing on discussing Ukraine and the importance of that conversation, and just to highlight some of the examples on why this is so important. So I first want to go through this is some of the comments right through the House of Commons. And so first of all, I'll highlight on June 1st of this year, 2022, I had questioned, and it was with the Prime Minister. So I'll just read this to you. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's goal to make everything more expensive is punishing Canadians at the grocery store. My constituency survey on inflationary grocery prices had this response from a resident, quote, "When is it going to stop? And how much more do you think people can afford to spend on set incomes?" And then unquote. Another said that with the cost of food now so high, they cannot afford medicine anymore. My question was, when is the Prime Minister going to wake up to how this made in Canada inflation is putting basic necessities out of the reach for so many people? And so that was my question, and how the Prime Minister answered that day, which was on June 1st. He said, "Mr. Speaker, we know the global inflation caused first by the pandemic and second by Vladimir Putin's illegal war in Ukraine is putting pressure on families, including with high gas prices. Canadians deserve support, which is what we are giving, but the Conservatives have opposed policies that put money back into Canadians' pockets. They voted against cutting taxes for the middle class. They voted against cutting childcare fees in half this year, and they voted against more support for families, seniors, and students. They're also opposing our price on pollution, which means they're opposing giving more money to 8 out of 10 families. We will be," and then he got cut off. But those are the words right from the Prime Minister. So you can see how he answered my question, which wasn't about Ukraine, actually. It had to do with inflationary grocery prices, but his answer was, in his view, how Ukraine was affecting that. And so there's one example as to how Ukraine could potentially be affecting what's happening in Canada, or the perception of it, and so why it's important that we have these conversations. There's another question that was on May 31st of this year with the member from Portage-Lisker, and the question was, "Mr. Speaker, it's always good to have you back. Hopefully we give the government and not you a hard time today. The Prime Minister is penalizing Canadians at the pumps on purpose.
Point of order,
because he
Mr.
wants
Chair.
to end Canada's energy sector."
I apologize for my voice, by the way.
Diane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize. We have listened for some time to things that are not relevant. I would ask for a ruling on the relevance of this. Firstly, I think the member is mistaken in that we are discussing a sub-amendment to the motion to discuss reproductive rights, and she is citing into the record things that have not only nothing to do with the motion, nothing to do with the amendment, but certainly nothing to do with the sub-amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Bendayan. This is an issue that has caused some consternation and expressions of concern throughout our hearing. I think it is imperative that we all endeavor to speak to relevant facts to the issue before us. For your edification, Ms. Gray, I will just read the sub-amendment that Mr. Bergeron introduced on June 6th. It reads that the words, quote unquote, after the completion of the committee's studies on and, quote unquote, prescribing the manner in which the study is to proceed be replaced with, quote, the committees make a decision on the studies before it on and specifying the manner in which the studies be undertaken. So as I'm sure we can all agree, that is a very, very specific sub-amendment, and I would ask that you keep your remarks confined to the issue at hand in this sub-amendment. Thank you. The floor is yours, Ms. Gray.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was sort of setting the table, I guess you could say, to what brought us to this point. So on that note, because we are looking at how important this is, I do want to bring up another issue around Ukraine, which really brings relevance into what we're talking about, and this has to do with gas prices. And so when we look at gas prices across the country...
Point of order, Mr. Speaker, that we are further away from relevance at this point, and I believe that you asked the member to focus her comments on the sub-amendment.
Ms. Van Dient, thank you for that. Again, as you can accept, as we can all agree here, relevance is elastic. But the sub-amendment before us is a pithy one. So I think we can all agree that the scope of the debate is very limited in this instance. And in the event, given the numerous points of order that the members have asked for, in the event a member does not keep their comments relevant and they continue to repeat the same thing, they will have to cede the floor to the next person on the list. So,
can I speak to the point of order?
Yes, Mr. Jennings.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the rules that are being discussed, I do think it's important to note that the length of the amendment, one way or the other, does not define the scope of the subject. You could add one word. For instance, you could add a word. Add another country to the list of countries, and that would be a one-word amendment that would invite discussion about the particulars of that country. The other thing is, I do just think it's very unusual that a member would cut off another member after having spoken for a period of time of about 15 seconds and say, well, that's not relevant. It is part of the debates we have here in the committee and the House to make arguments. And if a person speaks for 10 minutes and there's no obvious connection, okay, fair enough. If a member is speaking for 15 seconds, offering a quotation, I'm speaking to the matter of order, Mr. Chair, and I hope that in their repeated interruptions around alleged relevance issues, members will take these precedents into consideration. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Mr. Abel-Taif.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate your role today, and this has to be the role to set the framework and around all this motion and the sub-amendment that was presented by Mr. Bergeron. On the other side, I heard what Mr. Oliphant said at the very beginning. I think between what he said and what we've been, hearing from different members on the government side, I think the narrative is really unclear over what the parameters over those conversations or those discussions has to be, and therefore that's what leaving everything in limbo here. So I do appreciate if you can take the initiative as the chair and try to set this clarity over this, so we don't have to run to interruptions here and there after 15 seconds. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about a very wide subject, very important subject, is dominating everything, even all our life these days, which is referring to Ukrainian war, and all that coming at the same point where we are in the middle of this conversation that we have here. So The bottom line is, I believe, that will be helpful if you can set those parameters in a clear way so we can all work together. Because at the end of the day, I believe we need to be very constructive over what we're doing here. And I think we have responsibility to do so. And when I look to request that, I look at you, Chair. So thank you.
Thank you. Again, I think it's important, given what you have just said, that first of all, we not try to substitute our own judgment for the judgment of the person who is speaking. However, the person who is speaking should make every effort to ensure that the points that they are raising in debate are relevant and that they are not repeating themselves. So, Ms. Gray, please do bear those principles in mind, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that. Those comments, and I hadn't, just for clarification, repeated myself at this point. But moving forward for maybe other conversations, that's good to know. So, you know, again, with regards to Ukraine. I was going to talk about gas prices, but it was in relevance to Ukraine. It wasn't just in general, and so again tying to the Prime Minister's comments of how this he feels it's tied to Ukraine. I just wanted to outline a few things here and how this is important and how it could definitely tie into to what we're discussing here today. And so some of the numbers that I have here is, this was from June 2nd. The source was today's gas prices, and it was from the Canadian Automobile Association, the CAA.
You have a point of order?
I'd like to get on the speaker's list.
Apologies. My apologies, Ms. Gray. Yes.
Okay. So on that date, which was a couple of weeks ago now, and we know that things are actually even higher in many parts of the country than this. In Toronto, the price was 201.8 cents per
Point of
liter.
order, Mr. Chair.
Montreal was 211.1
You have
cents
instructed the
per
member to move on to something that is relevant, and it is now twice that she has continued to read from her pre-prepared filibuster remarks. And it is clear that you have made a ruling and that she is not respecting that ruling. I would also note that Ukraine is not mentioned in the sub-amendment, and would ask for you to direct the member to perhaps switch pages to something that is actually relevant to the motion on reproductive rights, or more specifically, the sub-amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Bendayan. Let me say, Ms. Gray, that you do consistently say that you're setting the table, but you have not modified your arguments, and you continue to highlight the very same issues. So even if one can say that they are relevant, you are repeating them. So I really do ask you to actually bear in mind what the sub-amendment is, or else I truly will have to ask that you cede the floor. Thank you, Ms. Gray. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate those comments. I've really would talk for about 20 seconds and then get interrupted. So it's difficult to sort of move forward without being able to get into anything in depth. When I think for the amount of time I've been here, I've had 3 or 4 interventions and not been able to even get into what I want to. So that's made it really difficult, Mr. Chair, and obviously that's a strategy here today. But you know that's fair enough. But you know, I think as we're discussing this, one has to be given the opportunity to go into the details as to where the rationale is and set the tone. And it's difficult to do that when you talk for 20 or 30 seconds and then get interrupted. So that makes it much more difficult to be able to carry on the conversation. So I guess if the chair, if talking about Ukraine and how this fits into the amendment and the sub-amendment and part of this discussion. If we can't talk about the price of gas and how that all fits in, then I'll move on to another topic that I was setting the tone. So what I'd like to bring up then is with respect to the price of wheat in Ukraine, because that is really one of the important topics right now. We're talking about food security, and as we're looking at the study and then all of the amendments, how really important this topic is. And again, I'll just bring out the example to set the tone here. So on this would have been March 3rd. I'll just point to a conversation that happened in the House. It was a question in the House of Commons by my colleague from Foothills, and I'll just read the intervention here, which does include the government's response. Mr. Speaker, Europe, Asia, and Africa all rely on corn and wheat from Ukraine. The region's breadbasket, with Russia's invasion, a global food crisis is emerging. The United Nations has already warned of catastrophic hunger, and hundreds of millions are facing famine. Canada can help. We have a crippled supply chain punishing carbon taxes, a looming rail strike, and PEI farmers are being forced to destroy millions of pounds of potatoes. In a global food crisis, when Canadian farmers want to help, why is the Liberal government neglecting Canadian agriculture? And the response was from the member from Vancouver South. And the response was, Mr. Speaker, at a time of crisis like this, I completely agree that Ukraine does supply the developing world with wheat. This crisis is going to be extremely serious. I have been at the UN speaking with the heads of the World Food Program and other organizations, and Canada can play a very important role in this. We will work with our counterparts on how we can provide support.
Yes, Mr. Sarai.
Again, I'm trying to find relevance at all in the price of wheat in Ukraine has on a sub-amendment that's proposed by one of our colleagues here on an amendment on reproductive facilities. I don't need to know what somebody said in the House in regards to the price amendment of Ukraine wheat.
Point of order.
It's explicit in the amendment.
Continuing to interrupt the speaker when the motion itself talks about Ukraine and getting back to the studies on Ukraine, the subject of what's going on with the war with Russia and the Ukraine is exactly relevant to the sub-amendment and the amendment.
I believe Mr. Sarai had the floor on a point of order, and you did not recognize other people. I just want to say that.
Thank you, Mr.
Well, sometimes you have to do it when you're dealing with people who have no respect for parliamentary procedure.
You're interrupting
absolutely no respect for parliamentary procedure and no understanding of the rules of the House of Commons.
Thank you for making our argument.
Members, I'd like to call for order. Mr. Oliphant, your point is well taken. Mr. Sarai, however, had concluded his remarks. Mr. Perkins, you were not recognized to speak. You just jumped into the debate. So again, to every member here, please do not speak until you've been recognized.
I would ask, yes, thank you, Chair. I would ask Mr. Oliphant, give him the opportunity to basically withdraw what he said about the disrespect to the procedures. Coming from a parliamentary secretary, and I've traveled with Mr. Oliphant, and I have a lot of respect for him. It's just that will be a great opportunity to do so, please. Like, this is not the way I would like to see this conversation going around this table. I believe we've been working in a constructive way as a group, and we must maintain, please, Rachel, and we're trying to maintain some level of respect among the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abeltaif. Ms. McPherson.
Just to follow up on Mr. Abeltaif's point of order, I would just like to point out that we have been sitting in this committee listening to Conservatives filibuster since May 16th, and it is very rich to listen to the members of the Conservative Party say that we need to act in a more parliamentary manner. When there is desperate work that this committee needs to do, and that they are asking members of this committee to act in a more parliamentary manner when they have literally filibustered this committee for weeks, since the 16th of May. It is absurd, and I would like Mr. Abdullah to take back his comments asking for the rest of the committee to act more professionally, and perhaps he could encourage his colleagues to act in a much, much more professional manner. Thank you.
I'd like to speak to the same point of order, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to this?
Mr.
I've been
Appleton.
very respectful. I've always been. And I haven't addressed Ms. McPherson with all what's going on, especially lately. So to that, I don't think that that her attack in a way on me at this point is relevant or appropriate. If anyone needs to respond to what I said, will be Mr. Oliphant. So thank you.
Mr. Janice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wasn't sure if Ms. McPherson's point was a point of debate or a point of order, but since she was allowed to continue, then on the matter of order she raised, I think it's important to note that there have been many motions to adjourn debate, motions to proceed to other subject matter, and calls for this to be hashed out of the subcommittee. We are in a situation where she and members of the government have continuously voted against adjourning
Mr.
debate,
Janice,
against
I
adjourning the
believe you're
meeting,
engaging in
and
debate.
against proceeding to other matters. So
Mr.
I'm not
Janice,
sure how to
I believe
interpret
you're engaging in debate.
her
Did
comments.
you have a point of order?
Well, I said I wasn't sure if her comment was a point of order, but insofar as hers was a point of order, mine is on the exactly the same subject as hers. So either they're both not points of order or they are. But if they are, then I appreciated the opportunity to respond and put on the record the fact that we have sought adjournment of this, and it's been opposed continuously.
Thank you, Mr. Janice. Ms. Gray, as you can see, everyone is asking that you kindly keep your remarks relevant. Mr. Janice, I would appreciate it if you did not interrupt. So, Ms. Gray, as you can see, it's pretty crystal clear that the sub-amendment has to do with the sequence of events and instructions to be provided to the committee and how studies are to be undertaken. So I would ask, and as you know, there is precedence for this, there is ample precedence for this, that if a speaker is debating and they keep repeating themselves and there is absolutely no relevance to the issue at hand, that they cede the floor. So I am asking you, please, in the interest of making sure that all members follow this proceeding and follow this debate, please ensure that you are keeping your remarks relevant to the sub-amendment that Mr. Bergeron has put on the table. Thank you.
Just a point of order, Mr. Chair. If you can clarify your ruling, may I speak?
Yes, Mr.
Okay. Thank you very much. I wouldn't want to be accused of speaking when I didn't have the floor. Could you clarify if comments about the situation in Ukraine would, in your view, be deemed relevant? Because it seems to me that the sub-amendment changes the requirements around the study in Ukraine, whereas the previous amendment requires the completion of the study in Ukraine. The sub-amendment would eliminate the requirement for the completion of the study in Ukraine to proceed. So it would seem to me that comments about the situation in Ukraine, although the sub-amendment doesn't add or remove the word Ukraine, it changes the words immediately before the word Ukraine, in terms, and it changes whether the completion of a study or simply a decision about the study would be required. So it would seem to me, based on that, quite obvious that that discussion about the situation in Ukraine is relevant, and Ms. Gray is speaking about the situation in Ukraine. So if you could maybe just clarify your ruling, are comments about the situation in Ukraine relevant to the sub-amendment? I think they obviously are. Mr. Chair, did you hear my remarks, and would you like to repeat them?
I did hear your remarks,
Okay.
Mr. Janice. I just wanted to say, I think upon close reading of that sub-amendment, it's pretty clear that the sub-amendment deals with sequencing as to when those studies are to take place, and it's not about getting into the substance of the amendment before us.
Maybe if I could
So
just
it's a
further clarify.
procedural issue, and I think the question before all of us here and every member who actually does speak is to speak to that very narrow issue as to whether that is a good idea or a bad idea, not to delve into the substance of the debate about the economic ramifications of the war on Ukraine.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up to the point of order, it's not entirely clear to me how we would ever make determinations about sequencing without consideration for the substance of the things which we are sequencing. Isn't that precisely the basis on which you would make determinations about sequence? Is relative importance?
If you read the sub-amendment, Mr. Jennings, it says that the subcommittee would assume responsibility for that. Correct?
The sub-amendment says that the committee, not the subcommittee, but the committee makes decisions on the studies before it on Ukraine. So it removes the requirement for the completion of the study on Ukraine and replaces it with a requirement for the committee to make a decision about the study on Ukraine. And so it seems to me that the substance of the situation in Ukraine would likely inform whether or not members thought it was vital to complete or make a decision about. I completely
Mr.
accept
Jennings,
what
are
you're
you-
saying
are
about
you
sequencing.
my
No.
You're
I'm just asking you to
debating the
clarifying
rule.
it.
I think it's pretty clarify.
Okay.
I think anyone who does actually read this.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Could
Mr.
could
Oliphant.
you let the committee know that there's no such thing as a point of clarification? There are very strict understandings of what a point of order is, and to clarify is debate. So I think that the point of order I am making is about what a point of order is. However, there's no such thing as a point of clarification. It does not exist in our standing orders in any sense. So if people want to debate, that's the purpose of debate, is for clarification, not a point of order.
Point of order.
Well,
Mr. Jennings.
Okay. I just with respect to the matter of order before the committee, I did not say point of clarification. I was raising a matter of order that was a clarification of a ruling of the chair. Mr. Oliphant is correct, broadly speaking, that a person can't just claim the floor to make a comment expressing an opinion, which is perhaps what he just did. But as a matter of order, if the chair makes a ruling, members have to understand as a matter of order what the requirement there is. So I think I understand that the chair is directing us to make arguments about sequencing. Those arguments about sequencing obviously have to be informed by the reasons why we might or might not sequence in a particular way, and that makes sense. So, but that involves Ukraine. Thank you.
Mr. Perkins, do you have a
point of order, please, Mr. Chair. So I'm looking at the amendment and the changes to the motion, and I don't see the word subcommittee in reference to your ruling. I see committee, that the committee makes this, that this isn't a subcommittee issue.
Yeah, the subcommittee's in the amendment, but not the subcommittee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Perkins. I had an opportunity to confer with the clerk. It's not specifically stated, but it's quite clear that it is a reference to the subcommittee, even though it's not explicitly stated here.
Mr. Chair, can I ask where it's clear? Because it's not clear to me. Sorry.
Thank you. So this is what we had, that the words "and that this study not take place until the committee makes decision on the studies before it on Ukraine, vaccine equity in Taiwan, as well as studies on legislation sent from the House of Commons, and further, that it not take place until the Subcommittee on Agenda and Procedure submits a report specifying the manner in which the studies be undertaken be inserted between the words, quote unquote, rights globally, and the words, quote unquote, and that the committee report its findings to the House. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ms. Gray, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for just reading out what I had originally read out in the starting of my intervention. So I think we're on the same page, because that's what I read out when I first started to speak. So I am on the correct. Amendment, if you want to, the correct amendment. So based on that, then what I've been speaking about with respect to Ukraine, when you look at the order of what might be discussed, I'm laying the groundwork about the importance of Ukraine, and so if I'm understanding it correctly, as the committee decides what order to do these various studies on, I'm setting the stage to say how important Ukraine is and how it's been affecting Canada. My points to this point haven't been specifically about what's even been happening in Ukraine, which is a whole other that's a whole other discussion. I've actually been setting the tone as to what's happening in Canada, how that's affecting Canada, and how important it is and how it's affecting our citizens here, on why this would be such an important topic to be at the top of the line while this committee looks at what order to do their studies. So I would hope that I can continue on with that conversation and that vein, because that's where I was coming from, and it seems like it's right within, after just hearing from the chair, where I set the tone from the very beginning and where I was going. So I would like some clarification on that, considering that we kind of brought us back to the same point that I started on, Mr. Chair. Can I continue?
Yes, but
Okay.
but bear in mind that I think members were provided the scope of this sub-amendment, and I think it was pretty clear that this is not only a sequencing exercise, but also instructions to the subcommittee. So please ensure that your comments fall within the scope that has been determined. Ms. Gray.
So therefore, continuing on with the importance of this particular topic to,
With the sub-amendment, Ms. Gray.
right, with the sub-amendment.
Yes, and I understand, if I'm not mistaken, you were referring again to the amendment and not to the sub-amendment.
And the sub-amendment refers to how the sequencing might happen as
Between the
discussed
various reports that this committee is considering.
between the various reports. So based on that, then, talking about why one particular topic may be more important than another would not be that would be relevant in this discussion, I would believe.
Have to have rationale.
That there, as to say the rationale.
So,
Would that be correct, Mr. Chair?
to the extent that there is any argument as to the substance of these reports and which one should take precedence over the other, that actually it's pretty abundantly clear that given the wording of the amendment and the sub-amendment would fall to the subcommittee.
Right.
That is not the challenge before the members here today.
Right, but the subcommittee would be looking at.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I have completely, I do not understand what we are, procedurally, what is going on in this committee. Is this a discussion between the member and the chair about what she can or cannot say in the hypothetical, or is she using her speaking time at the moment to ask questions of you? I really, perhaps I am a new member and I do not understand the debate that is going on between the chair and a member. The member has the floor. She was instructed by the chair to remain relevant because she was not. And now we are engaging in a lengthy debate about what she can or cannot say. I would suggest that if she has the floor, she should speak.
Thank you, Ms. Bendayan. I would have to agree. It's not for me to once again say what is debatable, what is not. I think all the members have been provided guidelines as to what the scope of the sub-amendment is. As to whether you feel you fall into it or not is a determination that you're going to have to make. We can't have this back and forth. So, Ms. Gray, again, please, if need be, do read the sub-amendment and ensure that you fall within the within the scope of that sub-amendment. Thank you. The floor is yours, Ms. Gray.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all of that that clarification. I know that you had gone to the clerk numerous times to gain clarification and had let the committee know that. So I think based on a lot of the questions that came here from a lot of the members that that there needed to be some clarification. I'm not sure if we're still 100% clear, but it's good that we've gone through some of that process. And I think that and thank you for entertaining my questions. Perhaps each time I could do a point of order, but you were very accommodating there. So thank you for doing that. So as we're looking at, bringing this forth to the subcommittee to have a look at how they're going to be reviewing this, and if that is in fact what's going to be voted on and what will happen, I guess the discussion is whether or not that is the appropriate place for that to be taking place. If my understanding is correct, that's what we're discussing here today. And as part of that, the group will have to look at what the actual amendment is and whether or not the amendment is something that should be discussed with the entire committee, or whether it should be something that's discussed with the smaller group. And so I think if it's going to go in the direction that the subcommittee looks at this, the subcommittee needs to be aware as to what the different members of this committee, or those of us that are subbing in, what our thoughts are on some of those different topics. And we do have a couple, three very important topics. We have Ukraine, we have vaccine equity, and we have Taiwan. And, I know that this committee has looked at all three of these topics, although there's still a lot of work to do. And I think as that subcommittee goes away and, if that's the direction, if that's the way this vote goes and then deliberates, it's really important for that subcommittee to know what the different thoughts are of all of the different members of this committee. So based on that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to express how I think that Ukraine is something that should be really top of mind for that committee, or that subcommittee, I guess it would be, and if in fact that's the way the vote goes, and if that's where it goes. So, a lot of what I've talked about already, I just started to set the table as to why the topic of Ukraine is so important right now, especially to Canadians. We do have a lot of Ukrainians that are coming to Canada. They're coming into every one of our communities, and we're seeing them come into every one of our communities. And so, even just earlier today, I was looking at my constituency emails, and every day I'm getting emails from constituents that are either trying to help Ukrainians that are coming into our communities, or, maybe they want to help nationally. And so I think, is that subcommittee does their deliberations, again, if that's the way that it goes, that they have the tools to be able to confidently talk about what the different members of this committee, or again, those of us subbing on, where our thoughts are in order to prioritize, which of the studies they're going to prioritize. So based on that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to bring up a couple other points why Ukraine would be a topic or a study that subcommittee should really be considering as a top of priority. And we can look at not even locally here, but we can look internationally to other news articles and conversations. Like, for example, I'll bring out the New York Times, where it talks about Ukraine invasion threatens global wheat supply. And I won't get into it because I know that there was some members that had some issue with talking about wheat. But again, I'm just setting the tone as to, why Ukraine is important for this subcommittee to be considering, if again it does go in that direction. So a couple of points on that I just want to bring up, because this is a national conversation. It's an international conversation, and of course at this particular committee at the Foreign Affairs, we do need to look nationally and internationally. And so there was an article that was published on February 24th of this year from the New York Times, and February 24th of 2022. It was updated in March 23rd of 2022, and it really does outline the Russian invasion of Ukraine and how it was threatening a lot of supply chains. So this is back in February, again updated in March, and since then we've now had several more months go by, and we've seen how this has even become much more serious than it was back then. And so I'll just read into the testimony here. I'll just read some of this article. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is threatening to cut off some international shipments of wheat, spurring shortages and pushing the price of a vital crop higher when supply chain disruptions have already sent food costs spiraling. Wheat futures on the Chicago Board of Trade rose 5.43% on Thursday, outstripping gains by other commodities like corn and soybean oil. Russia and Ukraine together export more than a quarter of the world's wheat, feeding billions of people in the form of bread, pasta, and packaged foods. The countries are also key suppliers of barley, sunflower seed, oil, and corn, among other products. In recent days, the price of agricultural commodities has fluctuated sharply as tensions around the Black Sea threaten to disrupt global shipments of wheat, corn, and vegetable oil. Disruptions and rising prices for those commodities, as well as the cost of fuel and fertilizer, important inputs for farmers, could further buffet global food markets and threaten social stability.
Chair, point of order.
Yes.
The honourable member mentioned that she wanted something read into the testimony.
Oh.
I would
into the
very
record.
much ask the chair to remind the members that members of Parliament do not provide testimony as members of the committee. They may be invited to testify as a witness if they have a private member's bill. Unfortunately, we may never get to private members' business, which we have two pieces of. And unfortunately, because of the Conservatives' filibuster, one of the members has a piece of legislation I think he would like to have discussed. So I just wanted to remind the chair that if we could ensure that our members understand that we do not give testimony as members of Parliament at committee. Secondly, on that, which is a true point of order, I believe, for reading into a debate a document which is not related to the sub-amendment at hand is truly
This is a point of mansplaining, not a point of order.
Appropriate. That we actually, to read into testimony, as it has been called, a document that is unrelated to the sub-amendment at hand is certainly not relevant to our discussion. And I think that the members should be asked to move on if the chair would like to do that.
Point of order.
No, there's a point of order. If you want to raise a point, you can speak to my point of order. You can't raise a point of order with a point of order on the floor.
Mr. Oliphant,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can we have some order, please?
A point of order, Chair. Just in respect,
Point of order
On his
has to
point
be
of order.
ruled on
On his
before
point of
another
order.
point of order can be raised.
No, on Mr. Oliphant, point of
Can we
order.
have some order, please? Order, Mr. Jenners. The 2 points that Mr. Oliphant has raised are actually very, very valid in the sense that this isn't testimony, this is debate. That's the first thing. I think we can all agree to that. The second point that is raised, he's absolutely correct. If you're going to read something into the record, which on its face demonstrates that it's not relevant to the sub-amendment, I would caution you not to do so. But I leave it to your judgment, Ms. Gray. Mr. Abel-Taif, did you have a point of order?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On just Mr. Oliphant's point of order, I think this is the second time that I warn against that Mr. Oliphant has been trying to tell the chair what to do. And I think that's an overreach, Mr. Oliphant. We have to keep things clear. And I believe the chair knows his job. And for Mr. Oliphant to every session suggest that what the chair should do, what the options of the chair, I think that's not proper. And I believe that this is kind of imposing a way on this whole committee. So that's why I asked Mr. Oliphant if he really feel that this committee is not run properly and he wants to take the chair position, he can do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abel-Taif. I think the points raised were truly procedural issues, and I think they were issues that benefit us all, so we can ensure that we are adhering to proper procedure. Ms. Gray, the floor is yours.
That's not an order.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the member opposite for clarification for that one word that I had used, and obviously his experience in this place is showing. So thank you, and I'm really glad that he did follow procedures well this self without just speaking and blurting out comments like he did earlier during this meeting, and that he did follow procedure as well. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for keeping order and keeping everyone on track. So I will move on. Again, what I had mentioned earlier was that when we're looking at this sub-amendment that, or for the subcommittee to decide on this sub-amendment, and as I had said, I think it would be important to explain to whoever is on that group, and if this vote does happen and it does go in that direction, the topics that they're going to be discussing, and which would be the most important topics to this committee. And so I think it's relevant to talk about the 3 different studies that are before this committee, so that subcommittee can really ascertain from the members here clearly which ones would be of most importance, since that conversation may not happen at the greater committee here. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. So if that sub-amendment does go through, that conversation will happen separately. It won't happen at the greater committee here. And so it's important for those members to have an idea as to what the priorities would be from those of us that are here in these chairs. And so that's where the context of my conversation here today is around, in order to let those committee members know, if again that's the way that it goes, what would be imperative. And I am subbing in on this committee for one of my honorable colleagues, and I do appreciate that opportunity. do have an interest in this topic and for sitting on trade, international trade for a time. Of course, there's a lot of crossover between trade and foreign affairs, and so it's good to have some of that context as we're coming into this, Mr. Chair. And so, again, to sort of move, I'll move forward. I'll move forward on this. We do have these 3 studies that will be considered of priority, and I think, to let that potential subcommittee know the one that I think would be of real importance right now. It's the headlines all day right now is about Ukraine, and it is something that affects every single one of our communities, I'm sure. We do have on this Hill, we do have young Ukrainian interns here that are being supported by all parties, and we actually had Vishivanka Day here. That was on the Hill. Many of us had met up with them. We met with them right in Parliament. We had a picture taken, and for those of us that don't have a traditional shirt, which I didn't, it was really great actually that one of my colleagues brought some extras, and I was able to borrow one in order to take that picture. And in fact, I actually wasn't going to come that morning because I didn't have a shirt, but I ran into some of the interns the night before, and they were just so wonderful. We had great conversations, and they encouraged me to come to the Vishivanka morning to have the picture taken. So
Point of order,
I'm glad that I
Mr.
did.
Chair.
And
As soon as they get
Mr. Sarai.
Mr. Chair, we all like our Ukrainian interns and interns in general who have participated and ethnic outfits, but I think the relevance of that on how wearing those or having a special day on the Hill and having them around has absolutely any relevance to this motion or the amendment or sub-amendment or anything per se to this study. I think the member is struggling just to fill time and trying to recall anything that can be associated with the word Ukraine somehow. And I think your persistent efforts to bring clarity onto what should be spoken to have fallen on deaf ears. And I ask that you make a ruling and pass the floor over to the next speaker. And I don't mind if it's another Conservative speaker or NDP speaker or anyone for that matter, but I think it's painful to just hear somebody trying to anxiously fill time just for the sake of filling time.
Point of order. Come on.
1 month.
Come on.
Absolutely.
Come on.
You don't have the floor, Mr.
Yeah. Well,
Dennis?
you shouldn't
And
talk
Mr.
that way
Dennis,
about
you
our
do
members.
not have the
all right?
floor, Mr. Dennis. Please allow the member
You
to
can't,
finish.
you can't let go on and
would ask
disparage
that-
other members, Mr. Chair. You have to
we've been
provide some
hearing this.
Mr.
impartiality,
Dennis, you
Mr.
have
Chair.
not been recognized, and you do
and
not
you
have
have to
the
provide
floor.
some impartiality when he's talking to a female
Mr.
member of
Dennis,
our
you do
caucus
not
like
have the
that.
floor.
We've been asking for 4 weeks. We've been waiting. We could have studied a lot of things. In
Mr.
this
Dennis, you
time,
do
but
not have the floor. Yes, Mr. Sarai?
I was just saying, Mr. Chair, we've been since May 16th, if my recollection is right, and it's June 16th now. We've been 4 weeks, a full month, discussing this amendment and sub-amendment, and I think it's time to put it to an end, but or get onto the topic and actually discuss what's relevant about it. Thank you.
Again, Ms. Gray, thank you, Mr. Sarai. Please do bear in mind the issues that are being flagged and raised by our colleagues. Please make sure that you keep your comments restricted to the sub-amendment that we are debating. Ms. Gray, the floor is yours.
thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was glad to hear the other members' comment just about the Ukrainian interns that we have here. I know that we've seen them around the Hill, so I appreciated his comment. And I will, Mr. Chair, just say quickly that that night before the Vishivanka morning, one of the women that I met, I asked her, I said, is your family safe? And she looked right at me and she says, I don't know. So I just wanted to bring that up because it really did touch my heart, actually. And it was one of the reasons why I came the next morning. So, you know, as I was saying earlier, there's this potential subcommittee that might be deciding on the studies, and it's relevant to hear from the members here what would be important so that the members on that subcommittee know where the priorities are. I think it's difficult otherwise for them to really deliberate without having a clear understanding or you know, a good knowledge as to what the priorities might be. And so that's what I'm attempting to do here, Mr. Chair, is to set the stage that if this does go to that subcommittee, that they've got some thoughts from my perspective anyways, and I'm sure many of the other members here as well would agree that that Ukraine is important, so that they can, you know, in their deliberations have context as to where those conversations should be going. And so you know, I think it's just really important. I mean, we've got a couple other studies that are a priority as well, and they're all very important. But as you know, as we're moving forward potentially with this subcommittee, it's really relevant to be mentioning the studies that are going to be talked about at the subcommittee. So I'm not sure how members here at this committee could be saying that to even mention or talk about the studies that'll be discussed at the subcommittee aren't relevant. And so that's what I'm trying to do here is to, and I'm just focusing on one, because if it does go to that subcommittee, that would be the one that, you know, that I would think based on you know, the input that I get from my community every day as to what's happening boots on the ground, which would be, you know, which would be important. We do have refugees coming into my community. We have a lot of community members that are trying to help citizens that are, you know, that have come from Ukraine, and I think it's important that potential discussion at the subcommittee know what's happening across the country. And I'm from British Columbia. You know, we do have a lot of a very strong Ukrainian community in my community, and I know that they would appreciate the fact that that this committee would be continuing to focus on what's happening in Ukraine. So, you know, again, bringing it back to the sub amendment that we're talking about here, I don't know how we can talk about that without mentioning the three studies that they'll be considering. So, you know, the continual points of order to even, you know, every time that I bring up some of the rationale why one of those studies should be a priority is it just you know, doesn't seem to make sense. And you know, how I started out kind of setting the tone, I think set the groundwork for where my conversation was going, and my rationale as to why I thought that Ukraine should be a priority. I will just mention a couple of groups just locally in my community that have really been working with Ukrainians coming to our community. The first one is called the Bravery Foundation in Kelowna, and that's one. It's not just in Kelowna, but it is actually across my my entire region. And then we also do have another group that's called Kelowna Stands with Ukraine, and they have been very active. They actually have done a lot of large fundraisers. I spoke at one of their fundraisers. And, they've had a lot of community support. They've actually been, a couple of the people that are really involved with them have been filling up luggage with all kinds of different items and flying to Poland and surrounding areas and very carefully distributing them. It's been amazing, actually, the amount of local community support. So they've been taking some of the funds and buying different items. They've had people donating. They fill up all these luggage bags and then, get on an airline and check all this extra baggage. And that's how they're bringing a lot of these supplies to the people of Ukraine. I mean, the amount of dedication and time that something like that takes is just incredible. I mean, these people all have jobs, and they've been doing this on their free time. And so I want to let that be known here on this committee, because if this does go to the subcommittee and they're discussing this as a priority, I'd like to let them know how much of a priority this is for my community and just how it's affecting so many people and how they're donating their time and donating their resources. There's been a couple of our local churches that have done everything from bake sales to, making different, hand-making different items that people can sell, and then they'll go and buy different products. Like I said, they've had people donating different items, and it hasn't been even necessarily simple things. Like they'll go out and buy vests, bulletproof vests, and they'll also bring medical supplies. So it's a little bit of everything. And then people will donate these luggage bags, and then they'll fly and bring them. So it's really been quite amazing, actually, to see the community spirit. In my community, I call it the spirit of Kelowna, and not just around Ukraine, but just around any time that our community comes together to rally behind something. Right now, what's happening in my community is we have a flood. I won't go there, Mr. Chair, because that's not relevant. But it was just to talk
Ms.
about
Gray,
the spirit.
so you've conceded that some
Yeah.
of the points you're making are not
Yeah.
relevant. That's
Yeah,
the first
about
part.
the flood. I won't
Secondly,
talk
you
about
have
the
spent
flood.
quite some time talking about developments as they've been unfolding in your riding. Surely we can all agree that that is not relevant to the sub-amendment here. So you have been provided numerous warnings. This is truly the last warning I'm providing. So please ensure that your remarks are relevant.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I mean, I'm not sure what our job is, but to draw on the
Mr.
things
Janice, you were not
I
recognized.
apologize. I apologize.
Yes,
May I
Mr.
have the
Janice.
floor on my point of order? Mr. Chair, I mean, I think it's core to our function as members of Parliament actually to draw on the things we're hearing in our ridings and the concerns being brought to us by people in our riding, insofar as we advocate for issues internationally. I mean, I do that
Janice,
often.
you're engaging in debate. That's not a point of order.
What's that? It was actually about relevance. I mean, you
I can clearly tell you that it's not relevant to the sub-amendment before us.
I think that's a bit of a filter there, Mr. Chair, but I wanted to raise that point in any event, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Janice. Ms. Gray, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Oh, sorry, did I hear someone? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Mr. Janice's comment, because I mean, really, the purpose why we're here in this place is to bring the voices forth of our community, and I fully understand that we're talking about the sub amendment, but everything that we do in this place has to be to bring with the mind of bringing our community to this place, whatever topic we're discussing. Whether it's a legislation, amendment, sub-amendment, whatever it is, we always have to bring the voice of our community and keep that in mind, that filter with everything that we do here. So, I think that it's important to do that as we're here. And again, what I've been mentioning is that this sub-amendment, which talks about a committee discussing what studies are before it, it's important for that subcommittee to know what the members that are here think about the different studies that they're going to be discussing. Otherwise, how could they possibly represent everyone? The whole purpose of a subcommittee is to represent everyone at the committee. That's the purpose of a subcommittee.
Ms. Gray, I'd just like to remind you that once a subcommittee does make a decision, then it comes back to the committee.
Right.
And there can be debate at that particular juncture.
Yeah.
At this particular point, I'm asking you to keep your remarks relevant to the sub-amendment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think what I'll do is I'll move that we proceed to schedule additional witnesses on Ukraine.
Okay. So
Because I can't continue. I feel like we've had a number of times about relevance. So it's time to it's time to move on. So I made that.
So we will put that to a vote.
Okay.
Sorry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion is that you proceed to the scheduling of other witnesses for Ukraine. Dr. Fry. Sorry, you're on mute, Dr. Fry.
Have I finally been able to speak at this committee on my motion
No, it's
and the amendments to it? Why did someone call my name?
Dr. Dr. Fry, we have a vote before us. Ms. Gray has brought a motion.
Recorded. Okay,
Yes,
all right.
recorded division.
Again, Dr. Fry, the motion before us is that the committee proceed to the scheduling of additional witnesses on Ukraine. Dr. Fry?
No.
Mr. Oliphant? No. Mr. Sarai?
No.
Ms. Vandenbeld?
No.
Mr. Zuberi?
No.
Mr. Abel Taif?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Jennis?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Absolutely.
Madame Larouche?
No.
Ms. McPherson?
Nope.
Mr. Chair, that is 7 nays and 4 yeas.
Thank you. So now we go to Mr. Jennis. Mr. Jennis, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to follow my colleague. And I think it's important to just speak here about the procedural context around this committee. Many members of other parties have made comments on it. I in particular, reflect on the comments that Mr. Oliphant made, the comments made by Ms. McPherson in a quote-unquote point of order. So let's just be very clear about the way this sub-amendment fits into the context of the committee's effort to discuss and define its foregoing business. So we had a motion put forward that sought to upend the normal process of committee, to use a majority to compel that a particular study take place in a particular way, with the implication being that it take place at a particular time. We had some discussion about that at the beginning. My colleague, Mr. Chong, put forward some reasonable substantive amendments trying to wordsmith a little bit to say,
Point of order.
let's, okay.
Point of order, please.
Dr. Fry.
Yes, I am just suggesting that nowhere in the motion under discussion, which has been amended and is being sub-amended, does it ask for this to happen now? It is just suggesting that we do the study The committee will decide when it wishes to do that study, and it is just asking for a certain number of days of meetings within which to study. There has been no suggestion anywhere in that motion that we upend anything, that we bypass anything, and that it happen immediately. Nowhere is the word immediately there. Nowhere is there that saying that we should leave other studies that we are in the middle of doing. Nowhere is it said. So that is not, Mr. Chair, information that's correct. It's disinformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fry. Mr. Janice, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For once, I do find myself agreeing with a few of the members across the way that as much as members may violently disagree with the things I say, it is not a violation of the rules of the House for me to have my opinion. And Ms. Fry essentially raised a point of order about the fact that she did not agree with something that I was saying.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Let's
Please.
sure.
Dr. Fry.
You heard me. The whole committee heard me. I did not suggest that I was disagreeing with Mr. Genuis's opinions. I am asking him to be very clear that he provides the concise information about what the motion said. And the motion did not ask for anyone to upend any studies that are ongoing at the moment. It just asked for it to be done as a motion to be studied in the future. It does not upend anything. And I am correcting Mr. Genius that it's one thing for him to have an opinion, but it's another thing for him to not speak fact. Thank you.
Point of debate. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fry. Mr. Janice, please resume.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think your ruling that was a point of debate was indeed a very wise ruling, and I commend you for your sage wisdom, and I certainly prefer you as chair to Mr. Oliphant's pretensions at chairing the meeting. Respectfully to Ms. Fry's point, I do not accept that what I said was factually inaccurate, although even if it had been, it still would not be a matter of order or procedure. It would still be a matter of debate. Even when, and it never happens to me, of course, but even when other members make errors in their comments, it is a part of the cut and thrust of debate for people to get themselves on the speakers list and to offer substantive corrections, perhaps backed up by evidence to support their conclusions. However, given that Ms. Fry made her points, I do think it is important to respond to them and say the following. When her motion came before the committee, it was upending the normal process, which has long been that the committee sets an agenda through collaboration and discussion among parties, with the general implication that committees proceed on in setting their agenda on something of a consensus basis. So you have different parties that put forward different studies. Each party identifies its priorities, and you try to then set an agenda that reflects those priorities. You complete a tranche of studies. At the end of that tranche of studies, you define the next set of work that follows. And what we had instead was, in the middle of, at the time it was 3, now it is 5 ongoing pieces of business, we had a motion put forward to have a different study on something else. And I think the clear implication being that we should proceed to it within a expedited frame of time. In fact, at the time we had moved to adjourn debate, and we had said, to Ms. Fry's point, saying, well, we don't have to discuss this. We don't mean to get to the study now. Well, if you don't mean to get the study now, then what in the world is wrong with adjourning debate on it so that we can consider this as part of our next tranche of studies once the work that is being done on the existing study is completed? And that was precisely the point that was made when this matter was first under consideration. And if you look at the time that we've been discussing this particular motion, it's actually been a constant feature that Conservative members have moved motions to adjourn debate have moved motions to proceed to other matters. And if one of my colleagues could pour me a bit of water, that'd be great. Proceed to other matters, to return to the core, to the matters that are currently before the committee, as well as moved motions to refer this particular motion to the subcommittee. Now, in every single case, our friends in the Liberal NDP caucus have, should I have said caucuses? I don't know. Maybe I'm just ahead of the times here. But in the Liberal NDP caucuses have voted against those motions to adjourn debate, to proceed to other business, to allow other things to take place. Now, I mean, of course, we have, in a sense, adjourned debate at one point in time. We had an informal in-camera meeting that took place in the midst of this by unanimous consent. We also had an election of chair that took place in the midst of this. So I have exhorted members privately and publicly to say that when you adjourn debate on something, it doesn't mean it's over. It doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it further. But it means that we set aside the debate on that subject matter to be able to continue on with something else. So our position has been consistently that let's complete the work before the committee and let's have discussions at the subcommittee, informal discussions among members. Let's hash this out, but we don't actually have to hash it out on the floor of the committee. We can have those conversations happen while the committee hears witnesses, completes statements, completes reports, completes the work that's in front of us. And it's impossible for people to say that they're the ones who want to get on to other things and yet continuously be the ones voting against our efforts to adjourn debate and move precisely on to those other things. Now, what was clear with the manner in which this was brought forward, that there was no interest in efforts to form sort of reasonable accommodations and consensus to set a foregoing agenda. That it was just about trying to overrule sort of the consensus norms of committee and to insert a kind of majoritarian norm in place of that. So then. What we said is let's be specific about adjourning debate until the committee completed its existing studies. And that motion was ruled in order by the previous chair. We were debating that motion. Then the chair left Parliament to pursue other opportunities. We had a new chair who retroactively ruled that previous motion that we had been debating out of order, and now we're on a sub-amendment to an amendment. And the amendment seeks to put into the motion actually precisely what some members, including Mr. Oliphant, have said they want to do. So Mr. Oliphant has said, okay, that he is supportive of having the Taiwan study. I think he said he's supportive of having the Taiwan study moved to the Canada-China Committee, but that we would complete the work on Ukraine, vaccine equity, as well as private members' bills, and have some discussions about the parameters of the motion in terms of how a study would take place. Well, that is more or less exactly the amendment that we put forward. Right, so it is the profession of Dr. Fry and of Parliamentary Secretary Oliphant to say that okay, actually, we're not trying to prescribe a timeline. We're not trying to upend the agenda of the committee. No. What we're trying to do is simply put, I think the words used were a stake in the ground with respect to this motion, but we can come back to it and work on it at another time. Okay, then a simple way of demonstrating the genuineness of what you've professed to want to do is to adopt the amendment that the Conservatives have put forward, which says precisely that. Which says precisely that, yes, we would complete the existing work of the committee, and then we would, after that, have consideration by the subcommittee of options, including, of course, this study. And if the committee were to adopt the motion, of course, it would be understood that the study would proceed, but it would proceed in a manner prescribed by the subcommittee, and that would give the subcommittee the opportunity to address some of the concerns around, well, what exactly would the contours of the study be, as well as to come to some determinations about things like length of meetings and so forth. So we are trying to say, okay, first of all, we should adjourn debate to get back to the work that we should have been doing all this time. But secondly, if insofar as continuously at the last sitting and this one, efforts to adjourn debate or proceed to other matters were rejected by others, by the NDP Liberal group. Insofar as that is the case, let us try to put forward an amendment that will actually simply put into the text of the motion itself the commitment that was verbally expressed by members anyways. But then it becomes a little bit suspicious when the same people who said this is our intention say we're not planning on upending the committee's agenda, in fact then come back to the point of saying, well, actually we're not going to support specific language in the motion that would have attended directly to that issue. So it just raises the obvious question. What are we doing with in terms of the government not being willing to support the amendment, not being willing to support the adjournment motions? It's basically the fact that the government and the NDP have made a political decision that they refuse to allow adjournment because they want to hold this committee hostage to demand that their particular agenda of upending the existing business of the committee happens, and they're just not going to let the committee do anything in the meantime. Again, if they wanted the committee to get on to other matters, we could adjourn debate, and they could bring this back at any time. Sometimes I think there's a misunderstanding around adjourning debate. It's not defeating a motion. It's not sort of sinking it forever, right? If we adjourn debate at 4:30, and then we have and then we hear a witness from 4:30 to 5:15, then someone can reinitiate debate on the matter that was adjourned 45 minutes later, provided that something has happened in between. So it's not in any way a concession or an end. It's simply to say, let's set this matter aside and proceed with other things. And that would be, I think, the healthy and natural way to proceed. But we've had a no on the amendment. We've had a no on adjournment. We've had a no on our repeated suggestions that, hey, let's proceed to other matters. Let's proceed to other business. So it just becomes hard to really take the things that, with all due respect, Dr. Fry and others have said about whether they are or aren't planning on upending the matters. And to refer to the comments that other colleagues have made earlier today in this debate, first of all, I do very much think it is important to establish the importance of the studies that we are talking about, because our proposals around proceeding to other matters, our proposals around adjourning debate, these speak precisely to what we believe the priorities of this committee should be. We believe the priorities of this committee should be the war in Europe, the invasion of the further invasion of Ukraine that we're seeing, catastrophic implications for Ukraine, but also massive questions and potential implications for global security. Tonight, the House is doing a take note debate on the global food crisis, and a big part of that is of course driven by this invasion. And I believe that what we're seeing seeing from the Putin regime is in a sense a repeat of tactics that Stalin used. That is the use of starvation as a weapon of war in an attempt to erase and deny Ukrainian identity. And in this case, the victims of this tactic of trying to use starvation as a political tool, the victims of this will be far beyond Ukraine. The victims will be those in many countries around the world that rely on the supply of food that comes out of Ukraine. So this speaks to the need to complete.
Yes, Mr. Oliphant.
I think we have gone once again far off the sub-amendment. Most of the discussion has been on the amendment, not on the sub-amendment. But now we are extensively into Ukraine, and that is really not relevant to the debate on the sub-amendment, which simply makes a difference between the end of the study and decision regarding the study. Ukraine is not at debate in here. Is not at issue. The issue is about a study about Ukraine, which is an entirely different thing. So I would ask the chair to rule on relevance.
Thank you, Mr. Oliphant. You raise a good point. Ukraine is not in debate here. So, Mr. Jennis, I'd ask that you ensure that you do keep your debate restricted to the sub-amendment before us. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, normally I don't appreciate being interrupted, but in full flight, Mr. Oliphant did give me an opportunity to take a sip of water, which I was grateful for. And I recall the 2015 promises of the Liberal Party about parliamentary secretaries would no longer run the business of committees. And I think those were, what a time that was back in 2015, so long ago. So much hope and idealism
Mr. Chair, point of order.
But
the issue of the participation of parliamentary secretaries, which has been approved by the House of Commons, is not a debate in this sub-amendment. And I think, again, the chair could ask the member to move to relevant discussion about the sub-amendment.
Understood, Mr. Oliphant. Mr. Jennis, one more time, I'm asking you to remain focused on the sub-amendment that we've been debating.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Oliphant has made my point for me again, so I see no need to develop it further. And I thank him for assisting me in that way. I've never disputed that he has a right to be here, though. I never thought parliamentary secretaries couldn't come and participate in committees. But if I may say, with respect to the sub amendment in particular, that the sub amendment has two parts to it. So the first part of the sub amendment seeks to remove the words "after the completion of the committee's studies on," and replace them with the words, "the committee makes a decision on the studies before it on." I think that as a matter of negotiation, if there's a will for us to sort of try to come to terms and come to an understanding about a path forward, I think Conservatives would certainly be willing to engage in dialogue around those modifications. However, I do not believe they are ideal. I think the language of completion is preferable to the language of make a decision on, because the language of completion is clearly stronger in expressing its commitment to actually do the work and complete the work and report that work to the House before then proceeding on to something else. It is our conviction that if this committee is to, in fact, in the ideal of the other parties, it would be join many other committees in studying the abortion issue, because Liberals have continuously brought that issue to many committees throughout Parliament. If this committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee of Canada, is to join other committees in also studying that issue, then our conviction, as per the language of that in the original amendment that is removed by the sub-amendment, our preference would be that we complete the committee's studies on those issues. And why then is it important for us to not just make decisions about, but to complete the work on these issues? Well, it's because these issues are extremely important and also time sensitive. There are many issues that are important that either could be studied by other committees or are being studied by other committees, or are questions of ongoing importance. But we are. But we had in particular chose to begin and seek to complete studies on Ukraine, vaccine equity, and Taiwan, out of the conviction that those issues were, I think, emergent issues. They're not issues that have been studied in the present context, at least, before, and therefore it was important for us to engage with them. My comments about the Take Note debate tonight that's happening in the House, I think, just are to underline the critical importance of this committee completing its study on Ukraine. Because in the process of completing its study on Ukraine, which is what the text that the sub-amendment proposes to remove says, the completion of the study on Ukraine should help us get to important conclusions about how we can confront this global food crisis that is driven by, in part at least, the use of starvation as a weapon by the Putin regime. There are many issues. If you listen to the debate in the House of Commons, there are so many issues that are tied back to the invasion of Ukraine in terms of their ultimate cause. And again, this speaks to why the completion, not just the making of a decision about, but the completion of the study on Ukraine is so important. And the point that my colleague was making, I think very well, despite being regularly interrupted, is that the economic challenges that Canadians are facing around affordability, around gas prices, are also often attributed by the government to the invasion of Ukraine. So this is obviously part of the case that needs to be made in defense of saying, hey, the completion of the work on Ukraine, as well as the other matters before us, is extremely critical. So if we think about the various issues that are at stake in that debate, it's of course the lives and the basic security, the defense of their country for Ukrainians. It is also the ripple effects, the food crisis, the questions around energy policy that this raises for Canada, for Europe, and for other countries, the questions around gas prices and inflation. All of these things, it is often argued in the House, have some relationship to the very acute crisis caused by the decision of the Putin regime to further invade Ukraine. And so this is why I would say respectfully that it is just not enough for the committee to say, well, we're going to broadly speaking make a decision about making a decision on, I should say, but same thing. Making a decision on the studies before it does not require the completion of those matters. And I will say as well that insofar as, and I've referenced their comments earlier, insofar as Dr. Fry, Parliamentary Secretary Oliphant, and others have said that they're not trying to upend the committee, that they are interested in completing the work that is before the committee, that it is not reasonable for them to then say, well, we actually don't want the language of completion to be in the amendment. Mr. Chair, I think another just important point to make is about the work of this committee and other committees as a matter of process is that the question of how committees do their work and whether they seek the completion of studies before moving on to something else, or whether they seek to kind of make decisions about and move a whole bunch of pieces around at the same time, is I think very important for us to consider in terms of setting the stage for our work as we go forward. So. When a committee is considering matters, of course, sometimes it is natural for the committee to have more than one matter going on before it. There may be a number of crisis situations that require acute attention. There may be different parties that want different kinds of studies. So the way of building consensus is to say we're going to move forward with a group of studies at a particular time. That also creates some potential challenges in that when you have a number of different studies that are operating at the same time, it's a question of kind of remembering and sustaining the work on that particular issue, as inevitably a particular study takes longer if it's spaced out. Sometimes you have changes in committee membership, people coming and going kind of in the middle of that study. So it's increasingly become my belief, just looking at what leads to effective committee work, that you should finish one or at least a particular group of studies and then move on to the next group of studies. This idea of working through one project to completion, of actually being able to set priorities as a committee, working through one project to completion and then moving on to the next project, that this is just good, effective committee work, because otherwise you get situations where changes in committee membership, people trying to remember, oh yeah, we had this hearing on this 8 months ago, and connecting it with what a witness said today, and how do we draw conclusions, putting together, of course, we all have notes and we all have records that we can look at, but it certainly is much more natural for committees to be able to work through a particular issue in a period of time to generate recommendations that come out of it, and then be able to move forward on that basis. And that is why our original amendment, which is now being altered by the sub-amendment, spoke specifically to the issue of not just making decisions about or setting agendas on, but completion of that work. And I think under most circumstances, most members would agree, actually, that to already have 5 agenda items before the committee, 3 studies that are underway, and 2 private members' bills that the study has not yet been done, but of course we have an obligation to get to because they have been referred to the committee by the House. The fact that we should work through the completion of those matters before
Mr.
proceeding
Oliphant.
to other matters is, I think, quite important.
I want to have a ruling from the chair with respect to the private members bill and the public bill from the Senate of Canada. The other place, they have been received by the committee. However, does the committee have to deal with them, or can we simply allow that time to elapse and have them deemed considered by the committee with no testimony, no evidence, and no opportunity for their sponsors in the House to actually be heard at committee? That it was raised that it's as though it's an obligation of our committee to hear that, but I think they may be deemed, having heard and be returned to the House without any consideration by this committee. That may be, and it's a point of order, because looking at our future business, I'm just wondering about that we may actually not have to deal with them. But I may be wrong on that, because one is a Senate bill and one is a House of Commons private members bill, a public bill and a private members bill. And the rules of that may be different than House legislation, which is coming from government. And I may be wrong on that.
Just on the same point of order, Mr. Chair, insofar as it was an urgent matter for the member to get clarification on that issue, I do think it should be noted that these are actually both Senate public bills. Neither of them are bills from the House. They're both Senate public bills. It's the bill that is from Senator Atulajan and the bill from Senator Duchesne.
Senate bills.
Yeah, they're.
Thank you for that, colleagues. I've been advised by the clerk that she will get back to us. So as soon as she makes a determination, I'll be sharing it with all of you. Mr. Janis? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Perkins had just suggested that we might suspend in the middle of my remarks until we get the ruling from the chair. So following that suggestion, I may have to find someone to run for the Conservative nomination in his riding, but all in good fun, Mr. Chair, the point I was making before he says bring it on. Okay, before Mr. Oliphant intervened, though, I was speaking to the importance of committees completing work on one matter before proceeding to another matter. I was making the case that is generally a good practice, and it doesn't mean that committees can't then return to issues as there are emerging developments. I suspect that following the completion of an initial study on Ukraine, there may be subsequent developments in future years over the life of this Parliament, depending on how long the Parliament lasts, that will lead us to want to return to that matter, perhaps do an update, perhaps make a statement in the context of that. But the immediate issue of the completion of the study, of being able to produce a statement. I think that, we know there's been some discussion about a statement, our report, and we could get to that work right away, of course, if there was a willingness on the part of other parties to adjourn the debate or to proceed to that matter. But despite our efforts to do so, as members know, that hasn't been the case. So we've spoken about the value of completing, as opposed to just making a decision on completing the study on Ukraine. I do want to say that with respect to the issue of Taiwan, obviously the committee began its study on Taiwan prior to the creation of the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations, and the issues that are the issues that are being raised with respect to Taiwan are issues that could also be debated at the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations, and I think we couldn't necessarily take a decision at this committee before a decision had been taken on what the appropriate actions are going to be by that other committee. I don't think we can presume the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations will be studying it. But my understanding, well, first of all, I know that there's substantial overlap between this committee and that committee, and my understanding is that based on the conversation that happened at Monday's meeting, the first meeting of the Special Committee, that there was an interest in proceeding with consideration at that committee around the issue of Taiwan. So I do think if that's the will of that committee, it would be very reasonable for this committee to work with that committee on ensuring that it was proceeding with the work that had been done here. And I could I don't think the rules allow a sub amendment, but I could certainly envision a revision to the original amendment that was not as, let's say, expansive as the sub-amendment that's before us, but that actually just sought to carve out something particular with respect to the dynamics around Taiwan. That is, that sought to say, well, in the case of Taiwan, we wouldn't require that the study be completed on Taiwan at this committee if it was taken up at another committee. But I will just say, on the other hand, with respect to Taiwan, the original language that is removed by the sub-amendment says, and that this study not take place until after the completion of the committee's studies on Ukraine, vaccine equity, and Taiwan. I think one possible interpretation of that would be that the completion of the committee's studies could also mean the completion of the committee studies by another committee. We would still, of course, want to see the completion of the committee's study on Taiwan, whether that be done by this committee or by the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations. I don't think anybody is speaking about not wanting to see the completion of that study. It's merely now because we have this new committee that could potentially do work on that issue. The question is whether that completion would move to another forum. But it would still be the completion of the committee study on Taiwan. It would be the committee transferring the study and the completion of that study in another place. So I do with respect to Mr. Bergeron's concern when he moved this sub-amendment in particular, he spoke about the Taiwan study perhaps needing to be considered in a different way in light of the fact that the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations may want to take it up. I don't think that the language of the original amendment would actually have excluded the possibility of that work being by mutual agreement transferred over and proceeding to a completion at that point. Of course, the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations is welcome to take up the issue of Taiwan on its own in any event, but I think it would wish to do so drawing from the work that has already been done by this committee, being able to take that up and continue that going forward. But regardless of how the Taiwan issue is handled, I think it's very clear that there is an urgency to the completion of the committee's work with respect to Ukraine and vaccine equity. The dynamics around access to vaccines are, of course, changing constantly. There are different circumstances.
For the interruption, Mr. Jennis. Firstly, I did want to respond to the point of order raised by Mr. Oliphant and by yourself, Mr. Jennis. I've been advised by the clerk that the answer to that question can be found at pages 1158 to 1159 of the third edition of Procedure and Practice. It reads in relevant part as follows. Should a committee fail to report back to the House as required, the bill is automatically deemed reported without amendment. So that is thanks to the guidance provided by the clerk. In addition to that, the clerk has also advised me that we have heard that there are not resources available to this committee past 5:30. So this
Mr. Chair, can I suspend? May I move a brief motion? I have 60 seconds left prior to the 5:30.
Stand suspended.